The boss is the perfect soldier, which is both her greatest strength and her greatest flaw. She is willing to do anything to accomplish her mission. Deliver a nuclear device to a psychotic madman, kill a close comrade, and to not only destroy herself, but to destroy her legacy, to be reviled as a villain for all time. Before the final battle, she reveals that she does wish for something greater, for a world without borders, without conflict, without capitalism or communism. However, I believe she knows, even if she says otherwise, that this dream is impossible, at least for her. Instead, she both metaphorically and literally places her legacy in the hands of her apprentice, her best student, her son in all but name. The boss is an unusual video game antagonist. She is eloquent and thoughtful. Despite being a legendary master of combat, she uses force sparingly. She is a graceful and fluid fighter. She focuses on disarmament and incapacitation rather than outright killing, even in her final boss fight. She actually has the lowest confirmed kill count of any antagonist I have ever examined on this channel. She does not personally kill anyone during the whole course of Metal Gear Solid 3's story. This is in stark contrast to Colonel Volgin, who is a much more typical video game villain. He is a beefy, meathead bruiser who beats his opponents to death with his bare fists. He is a sadist who delights in inflicting pain on others. He is an evil commander who casually throws away the lives of his own soldiers and comrades. He is her foil, and the contrast defines both of their characters. And whereas he is willing to sacrifice the lives of his soldiers by the hundreds, she is willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. Sacrifice is a theme we have discussed a lot of on this channel. Heroes and stories are constantly making sacrifices for the greater good. You could argue that is the basic definition of heroism. However, the boss's sacrifice reaches an extreme that we have not seen on this channel before, because, as I have already mentioned, she does not just give up her life. In order to extricate themselves from an embarrassing and, to be fair, potentially cataclysmic diplomatic snafu with the Soviet Union, the American government chooses to make the boss their scapegoat, to abandon her in enemy territory, to cut all ties, to smear her reputation. Instead of a hero, history will remember her as a traitor, a terrorist, and a mass murderer. She will be reviled and despised, not for anything she has actually done, but for a story her government, the people she spent her entire life in service to, make up about her to save their own skin. Okay, so in the background of Metal Gear Solid 3, the American government is engaged in this convoluted, covert scheme to steal something called the Philosopher's Legacy, which is basically just a bunch of money hidden all over the world, and which is currently in Colonel Volgin's possession. When the boss pretends to defect and join forces with him, she is under orders from her government. However, when Volgin very literally blows up everyone's plans by detonating an American-made nuclear bomb in the middle of Russian soil, for no reason at all really, he is just a crazy psychotic asshole, well, then things get complicated. The American government, to absolve themselves of responsibility for the explosion, pin the blame for this attack on the boss, and agree to have her and her entire Cobra unit killed to prove the government's innocence. And so her boundless service and loyalty will be rewarded with betrayal and death. And this is not even the first sacrifice the boss has been required to make on behalf of her country. She was already forced to kill the Sorrow, the father of her only biological child, during a previous mission. A child who was taken from her, by the way. She was irradiated during atomic testing, which stripped her of the ability to bear future children. She was badly injured and irradiated again in a shuttle mission during the space race. She sacrificed motherhood itself in the line of duty. By the start of Metal Gear Solid 3, she has already given up far too much for her country, and still her government has the audacity to demand more. To them, she is not a person, but a tool, to be used and then thrown away when the job is done. And the really crazy thing is that the boss does not fight back. She acquiesces to this twisted and unfair scheme concocted by her superiors. She, more or less, goes gently into that good night. And the big question is why? What did she hope to accomplish by this sacrifice? Was it really just out of loyalty to her country, or is there something else going on here? Now, I should note that in this video I will only be discussing the story of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. I am not going to include any of the revelations made in Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, which is a decision that I know some fans are not going to like. Peace Walker is a direct sequel to Snake Eater, and the boss's backstory, motivations, and legacy are at the core of its narrative. Characters in that game spend a lot of time investigating and debating what her true intentions were and the best way to carry out her wishes. And it gets pretty convoluted, to be honest, but it wouldn't be Metal Gear if it were straightforward, right? While Peace Walker does build directly on Snake Eater, I believe it, like all sequels, tells its own story with its own distinct narrative goals, and it deserves a separate analysis rather than just lumping everything together. In this video, I will focus on how the boss functions specifically within Snake Eater's narrative, the choices the writers made for her character in this particular story. I will examine exactly how Peace Walker builds on and complicates her character in a follow-up video. So let's dig into it. How are the boss's motivations portrayed in Metal Gear Solid 3? Something important to remember is that this is not the boss's story. This is a story about Big Boss, his origin. Metal Gear Solid 3 has many characteristics of a coming-of-age story. It is about growing up. Naked Snake is explicitly referred to as a child multiple times in the game. During the bridge scene, the boss says, "This one is still just a child, too pure for us Cobras." And she is referred to as his mother. He calls her that himself. And the Cobras are referred to as the sons of the boss. It is as if, having lost the capacity to bear biological children, she has spent her life raising a surrogate family of sons to replace the ones stolen from her by the philosophers. In order to become a man, Snake, and that is the name I'm going to refer to his character as from now on, anyway, Snake has to leave his mother's side, step out of her shadow, strike out on his own, and build an independent life. Which is especially challenging for him because they share a much closer relationship than the typical mother and son. Just listen to their opening dialogue together.
Jack, is that you? How many years has it been?
Boss?
That's right. It's me. Talk to me. Let me hear your voice.
It's been 5 years, 72 days, and 18 hours.
You've lost weight.
You can tell just by the sound of my voice.
Of course I can. I know all about you.
Really? Well, I don't know anything about you.
The boss knows him so well that she can tell his weight just by the sound of his voice, and he is so fixated on her that he can count down the time since their last encounter to the exact minute. As he mentions to Ava later, there is a depth to their relationship that is difficult to put into words. They have lived and died together. Half of him belongs to her. At this point in his story, he is not really his own man. He is defined by his relationship to the boss, her protege, her best student. He is similar to the other Cobras, who are also not really individuals, because they have no true will of their own. They go wherever she tells them to go and believe whatever she tells them to believe. They are more like appendages than actual characters. And I think the boss wants to show Snake a different path, a better path. She doesn't want another Cobra, just another mindless tool to add to her combat unit. Coming-of-age stories are all about the loss of innocence. A naive character leaving home and coming face to face with the harsher truths of the world. Which is exactly what happens to Snake when he discovers just how cruelly the boss was treated by the American government. The sexual encounter with and subsequent betrayal by Ava plays a role in that maturation as well. That's another big part of coming-of-age stories. Learning that love and relationships are complicated. Fairy tale romances don't really exist. Some of the people who claim to like you will have ulterior motives. Another common element of the coming-of-age narrative is the mentor, a character who shows our protagonist the ropes, how to survive in a dangerous world. That is, of course, the boss, the woman who trained him, who taught him everything he knows. If you hang out here in the starting area and just keep spamming her with radio calls, she will explain just about every mechanic in the game to you. She is the tutorial. At the beginning of the story, she claims that she has nothing left to teach him, but that is not really true. Operation Snake Eater is one big lesson about the true nature of the soldier, what total loyalty to a government really means. The very first words out of her mouth are a speech about the ephemeral quality of world governments, the transience of geopolitics, enemies today who will become allies of convenience tomorrow, and vice versa. Let's listen to a bit of that speech together. Here it is.
Politics determine who you face on the battlefield. And politics are a living thing. They change along with the times. Yesterday's good might be tomorrow's evil. A soldier is a political tool, nothing more. That's doubly true if he's a career soldier. Right and wrong have no place in his mission. He has no enemies and no friends. Only the mission. You follow the orders you're given. That's what being a soldier is. People aren't the ones who dictate the missions.
Then who does?
The times. People's values change over time, and so do the leaders of a country. So there's no such thing as an enemy in absolute terms. The enemies we fight are only enemies in relative terms, constantly changing with the times. As long as we have loyalty to the end, there's no point in believing in anything, even in those we love.
And that's the way a soldier's supposed to think?
The only thing we can believe in with absolute certainty is the mission, Jack.
The boss is expressing an unusually nihilistic view of the nature of the soldier here. In her description, it is not honorable or noble or even good to be a soldier. A soldier is not really a person, but a political tool. Even loyalty to one's country, a characteristic which is so celebrated in most other stories, here is portrayed as something hollow, because your country will change depending on who is in charge. What you are fighting for will change with the next election, the next shift in policy. A soldier does not, cannot believe in anything other than the current mission. Because in the very next mission, the soldier may well find themselves fighting for something completely different, maybe even the opposite. Maybe you will be ordered to kill someone you call a friend. Compare the boss's dialogue with what you would hear in a typical military video game. You know, all of that hoorah bullshit, America, #1, being a soldier is cool. In this opening dialogue, the boss is trying to break Snake out of his naive and childish worldview. And perhaps the writers are trying to break the player out of that naivete too. This is not your typical action game, and these are not your typical action heroes. With this speech, she is confronting Snake with what it really means to be a perfect soldier, the true patriot. It is not all guts and glory, it is also politics and treachery and following the whims of whoever happens to be in power this year. It is not a positive portrayal of military service. You could even describe these as kind of dangerous ideas. In real life, your government, no matter where you live, as either a soldier or a citizen, would really prefer that you just be blindly loyal, obliviously patriotic to your country. They do not want you to question the true nature of that loyalty the way this character does. Anyway, moving forward to the scene on the bridge. This is the first time the boss actually appears on screen. I want to watch just a little bit of this one together and pay really close attention to the choices that the writers, the animators, and the voice actor are all making here. How are they presenting this character? How does she behave? How does she deliver her lines? Okay, here it is.
Boss?
Good work, Jack.
What are you doing here?
Sokolov comes with me.
Boss, what is this?
I'm defecting to the Soviet Union. Sokolov is a little gift from my new hosts.
I absolutely love this introduction. They are all standing on this rickety, unstable rope bridge, which the player will know from personal experience is really easy to fall off of. The boss drops these huge, heavy containers onto the bridge, one after the other on each side, which causes the bridge to sway wildly in the air, and she stands completely still. She maintains her balance effortlessly. It is such a smart way to demonstrate a character's strength. I would describe the voice actor's performance as subtle, even solemn. She delivers her lines in a bit of a monotone. This is in contrast to a lot of other Metal Gear characters like Colonel Volgin or Ocelot with his stupid cat call, or the Cobras especially, who are absolutely ridiculous, who put on really big, outrageous performances. I think the developers are trying to communicate to the audience, hey, this is a character we want you to take seriously. You could also describe the boss as somewhat robotic. Her facial expression remains unchanged for almost the entire game. She never expresses her emotions in a loud way, even during the final confrontation when she is recounting all the tragedy that she has faced. She remains pretty stone-faced. These robotic characteristics match that idea of the perfect soldier. Her emotions do not matter to the mission, and so she keeps them bottled up. In future scenes, she will ride this white-gray horse, which I think gives her a sort of majestic quality, like a knight riding into battle on her graceful, shining steed. And the literature major in me cannot help but compare it to the way Volgin rides the Shagohod into battle at the end of the game, which is this horrific, howling monstrosity that drags itself across the ground like a wounded animal. The contrast between their mounts says a great deal about their two characters. Elegance versus brutality, grace versus vulgarity, nature versus machinery. Later in this scene, the boss saves Snake's life for the first time. Volgin declares that they cannot allow him to live because he knows too much. Volgin steps forward, prepared to kill Snake himself, but the boss stops him. She says she will handle it. There is this really fascinating moment where she offers Snake her hand. It is this small, rare expression of tenderness from an otherwise pretty cold character, as if to show her protege that she still cares about him. And then she immediately breaks a few of his ribs and throws him over the side of the bridge and down into the river below. But these are only flesh wounds that she knows he can survive. She hit him hard enough to prove her loyalty to Volgin, but softly enough to keep her apprentice alive. A little later, they share another brief moment as she passes by in the helicopter. Once again, they hold out their hands to each other, but this time she is far outside of his reach. Destiny has set them on separate paths, and mother and child will never be able to embrace each other again. Moving forward after Volgin detonates the nuclear device, the boss is declared a traitor by the American government, who orders Snake to hunt her down to prove his innocence and loyalty, which somewhat ironically will also allow the American government to prove its innocence in the eyes of Khrushchev and the Soviet military. Metal Gear Solid 3 strives really hard to position its story within real-world historical politics. It ties major events in the game to major events in real life. The Cuban Missile Crisis, the assassination of JFK, the fall of Khrushchev, and the rise of Brezhnev. It is not just a story about the boss and her apprentice. It is about this grand, dangerous game of geopolitics being played by the world powers, and the ordinary, or maybe not so ordinary, soldiers who get crushed in between. But there is something else going on here too. Remember earlier when I talked about how Metal Gear Solid 3 is a coming-of-age story, and that the boss fits the archetype of the mentor? Okay, well, the mentor usually exits the narrative somewhere around the midway point, leaving our protagonist to apply their lessons in the real world to survive on their own. But that's not all. In these kinds of stories, it is often not enough for a protagonist to simply survive to be considered grown up. The protagonist also has to surpass their mentor in some way, which is exactly what Snake is ordered to do. The true goal of his journey is to kill the boss. She is the final boss of the game. Everything else is secondary. And her next appearance in the story demonstrates just how difficult that is going to be. About 5 minutes into his new mission, Snake stumbles directly into her, and she immediately disarms him, breaks his shiny new gun, blows up his aircraft, thus alerting his position to nearby enemy soldiers, kicks his ass, and repeatedly commands him to go home. Her tone resembles that of a mother scolding her disobedient child. The whole purpose of this scene is to show the audience just how much growing up he has left to do before he can stand on an equal footing with her. Moving forward, we have two scenes of the boss interacting with Volgin and his lieutenant Ocelot. who is of course her actual biological son, who she never had a chance to raise herself. It is not clear if she is aware of this, but her interactions with Ocelot are very similar to her interactions with Snake. For example, in the next scene, when Ocelot is torturing Sokolov with his little flamboyant revolver juggling trick, and god, Ocelot is such a loser. Anyway, not only is the boss able to perfectly keep track of exactly where the single bullet is located, and when it will be fired, but she disarms him and breaks his gun too, which is exactly what she just did to Snake in the previous scene. Also, in this same scene, notice the difference between how she responds to the news of the first Cobra's death compared to how Volgin reacts. He throws a big temper tantrum and punches the wall, while she remains completely stoic, not revealing any of the pain she must feel at having lost one of her closest comrades. In her next appearance, this one at Volgin's base, she interrupts an argument between Volgin and Ocelot and instantly takes over the scene. She has a very commanding presence. This is also where she first mentions the Philosopher's Legacy, which is her true goal. Remember, that was her original mission. She suggests that Snake has been ordered to find it, which is not exactly true. She is using deception to trick Volgin into revealing the Legacy's location, which ultimately works, though Snake is going to suffer for it. The crazy thing is that even now, after having been betrayed by her country, she is still striving to complete her mission. She really is a true patriot. Anyway, this leads us to the interrogation scene, or not quite. First, Snake and the boss have yet another confrontation, where she once again overpowers him, though I think he lasts a little longer in this fight than previous ones. Evidence that he is in fact growing up, growing stronger. She also saves his life for a second time here. Volgin attempts to shoot Snake, and so the boss easily throws him to the ground too, which is an important detail, because it shows the audience who is really in charge here. The boss could crush Volgin at any moment if she wanted to. He lives only because she allows him to, because she needs him to complete her mission. Anyway, now we get to talk about the interrogation scene. This is another really important moment for her character, because this is the only time in the entire game where we see her hesitate. Snake has been captured and is being brutally tortured by Volgin, because the boss planted the idea in his head that Snake is after the Philosopher's Legacy, so Snake's suffering is actually kind of her fault, at least partially. She tries to put a stop to the torture by claiming that Snake has been trained to never give up information, but the truth is he has no information to give up. He does not yet know anything about the Legacy. But whatever, during the torture it is revealed that the boss has been tracking Snake's location with a transmitter for the entire operation, with which she could have ambushed and defeated him at any time and chose not to. This causes Volgin to doubt her loyalty, and just watch for yourself what happens next.
It pains me to do this, boss, but under the circumstances, I'm afraid I must ask you to show me some proof that you and he were not in collusion.
You don't trust me, is that it?
Not that, but he is your apprentice.
What do you want me to do?
Let's see. Cut out his eyes. I don't like those blue eyes of his. There's nothing more important to a soldier than his eyes. You made him a soldier, and now you will unmake him. Yes, it'll make for a touching display. He's all yours. Do it! Ruin him, just as he did the Cobras.
As I mentioned before, this is the only time in the entire game when the boss is shown to hesitate. In this moment, in an exact mirror of the words she once spoke to Snake, she is being forced to choose between completing her mission and protecting her protege, between loyalty to her country and loyalty to him. Luckily, Ava intervenes before she has to make a decision. There is actually one other time this happens. In the flashback when we hear the Sorrow's final moments, when he tells her that she must kill him. She hesitates then too before taking the shot. These two examples taken together demonstrate that the boss is not a perfect soldier. She is not the emotionless robot she pretends to be. Just like everyone else, sometimes, rare as those times may be, her very human emotions may prevent her from completing her mission. Afterwards, she helps Snake escape by shooting a fake death pill into his leg and giving him the single-action army revolver. And later, she finally succeeds in her mission when Volgin gives her the Philosopher's Legacy microfilm for safekeeping. All she has to do now is deliver it to the American government, which she will accomplish by being defeated in battle by her apprentice. Okay, to end this video, let's fast forward all the way to that final confrontation, the final battle between teacher and student, which takes place within this absolutely gorgeous field of pure white flowers, perhaps representing the purity of the boss herself. Before the battle, the boss delivers a very long monologue. Most of this is a repeat of ideas we have already discussed. The nihilism inherent in total loyalty to one's country, the short-sightedness of geopolitics. This is where she first expresses that vision of a world without borders, without conflict, without East or West, capitalism or communism, a world somehow unified. A vision inspired by her experimental shuttle mission to space, by an image of the Earth as a borderless blue-green marble shining in the otherwise lifeless void. But mostly she talks about herself, her own backstory. She lists off every sacrifice she has ever made in service of her country, and when you hear them all, it becomes clear that the boss cannot sacrifice her life, because she is already dead in every way that matters. She is just waiting for someone who is strong enough to hammer the final nails into her coffin. Her country has already taken everything from her that she ever cared about, or more accurately, she gave up all of those things willingly, until she has reached a point where she has nothing left. She is teaching her protege his final lesson. This is his future too, if he does not choose another path. We are going to watch the end of this monologue together. Here it is.
Look at this scar. This is proof that I was once a mother. I gave up my body and my child for my country. There is nothing left inside me now. Nothing at all. No hatred, not even regret. And yet sometimes at night, I can still feel the pain creeping up inside me, slithering through my body like a snake. I've never talked this much about myself before. Thanks. Thanks for listening to me. I feel content.
When she undoes her suit and shows us the scar underneath, she's not just revealing the pain she has experienced, but also her humanity. Very literally, her human body. Her skin, her bare flesh, not perfect, but scarred and damaged. Proof that she was once a mother. Proof that she was once a person. That she was once something more than just a soldier. That she had someone in the world she cared about more than completing her mission. But even that was taken from her. All that is left now is to die at her apprentice's hand, her son in all but name. By calling in the airstrike, she creates an impossible scenario for him, to force him to kill her for his own sake, so that he can be the one to surpass her, so that he will have the strength of will to forge a new path. He cannot refuse and he cannot run away. He must either fight or die. This is the final step of his coming-of-age journey. With this act, he becomes a man. You see, in the end, the boss does not die out of loyalty to her country, but out of loyalty to him. We've already talked multiple times in this video about how the boss sacrifices even her legacy for the sake of her mission, but that is not really true. Your legacy is not just the things people say about you after you are gone, it is what they do. Your true legacy is the influence you had on the lives around you. And so of course the boss's true legacy is Big Boss. And not just him, but his sons too. Solid Snake is her legacy. Of course, at this point, Naked Snake does not realize any of this. It is not until Ava reveals the truth about Operation Snake Eater that he begins to understand the lesson the boss was trying to teach him. Then he can recognize how hollow the celebration is at the end of the game, how meaningless the words the president speaks to him are. The true patriot of this story is already dead, killed and betrayed by her own country. Military-themed video games have a tendency to glorify militarism and violence and blind patriotism, but the boss's character tells a very different kind of story, one where loyalty is not rewarded but exploited, where soldiers are treated as expendable tools, where all political systems, both democracy and communism, are portrayed as treacherous and conniving, something which needs to be transcended rather than something worth fighting and dying for. In the end, the boss achieves a kind of immortality that no government medal or historical record could provide, not by dying as a soldier willing to sacrifice everything for her mission, but by dying as a mother willing to do anything to save her spiritual son from a fate worse than death. And that is the end of my analysis of her character. Next time we will be taking a closer look at a much more typical sort of video game villain, Colonel Yevgeny Borisovich Volgin. So see you then.